Ladies and gentlemen, gather close because tonight we're diving into one of boxing's greatest rivalries, a trilogy so controversial, so dramatic, and so full of twists that it took 3 separate fights across 4 years just to settle the argument. This is the story of Manny Pacquiao and Timothy Bradley, 2 warriors who shared 36 rounds together, and whose saga remains one of the most talked about in modern welterweight history. It began in June of 2012, inside the MGM Grand, where Manny Pacquiao stepped through the ropes as the reigning WBO welterweight champion, a living legend from Sarangani province who had already conquered 8 different weight divisions and become the pride of an entire nation. Standing across from him was Timothy Bradley, the undefeated challenger out of Palm Springs, a fighter nicknamed Desert Storm, who carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who believed he belonged on the biggest stage in the sport. Few gave him a real chance. Pacquiao was the superstar, the offensive whirlwind who had authored some of the most thrilling knockouts of the era, while Bradley was simply respected as a tough, durable champion without the same spotlight. From the opening bell, though, it became clear this would not be the coronation everyone expected. The pace was frantic from the very first exchange, both men trading without hesitation, refusing to feel each other out the way cautious fighters often do. Pacquiao's straight left hand found its mark early and often, snapping Bradley's head back and drawing roars from the crowd every time it landed clean. By the middle rounds, Pacquiao appeared to be dictating the tempo, mixing his signature multi-angle combinations with vicious bodywork, and there were stretches where Bradley looked genuinely hurt, wobbling from short lefts that seemed to scramble his balance for just a heartbeat before he recovered. But Bradley refused to fold. He leaned on his conditioning and his willingness to stand in the pocket and trade, landing check hooks and looping right hands that occasionally caught Pacquiao by surprise. As the rounds wore on, commentators at ringside repeatedly noted how competitive the action had become, praising Bradley's underrated defense and his refusal to be broken by a fighter many considered the most dangerous offensive force in the sport. By the 12th round, both men were exhausted, both had absorbed real punishment, and both believed, deep down, that they had done enough to win. When the scorecards were read, the boxing world was stunned. By split decision, Timothy Bradley was declared the new WBO welterweight champion, snapping what had felt like Pacquiao's unshakable hold on the division. The reaction was instant and furious. Fans, pundits, and even many neutral observers felt the decision defied what their own eyes had told them, and the outcome quickly became one of the most disputed verdicts in recent boxing memory. Bradley, understandably elated, stood by his victory, insisting he had outboxed Pacquiao with smart footwork and cleaner shots. But the controversy surrounding that first fight ensured one thing above all else: a rematch was inevitable and the boxing world would demand it. 2 years later, in April of 2014, the two rivals returned to the same ring to settle unfinished business. This time, there would be no split decision controversy to argue about. Pacquiao came in with a clear sense of purpose, determined to erase any doubt about who the better fighter truly was. He fought with discipline and urgency, peppering Bradley with sharp combinations, working beautifully to the body, and unleashing uppercuts that repeatedly found their target as Bradley pressed forward. There were moments of real drama, wild exchanges where both fighters unloaded everything they had, moments that reminded everyone why their first encounter had been such an instant classic. But this time, Pacquiao's work was simply too consistent, too clean, and too relentless for Bradley to overcome. When the final bell rang, there was no lingering suspense. The judges scored it unanimously in Pacquiao's favor, and the WBO welterweight title changed hands once again, this time with a verdict nobody could reasonably dispute. Bradley, gracious even in defeat, openly admitted afterward that Pacquiao had simply been the better fighter that night, a rare and respectful concession in a sport not always known for humility. For Pacquiao, it was vindication, a statement that the first fight's outcome had been an aberration rather than a true reflection of what happened between the ropes. Yet even with the score seemingly settled, boxing fans sensed there was still one more chapter left to write. That chapter arrived in April of 2016, when Pacquiao and Bradley met for a third and presumably final time, in what many were calling the true conclusion of their trilogy. By this point, both fighters carried different burdens. Pacquiao, now balancing his boxing career with a growing political future in the Philippines, was fighting under the shadow of retirement questions, with speculation swirling that this could be the final bout of his legendary career. Bradley, meanwhile, arrived with something to prove after enduring a difficult stretch, determined to make this fight the one that finally silenced any doubts about his place among the era's elite. The action once again lived up to the rivalry's reputation. Both men fought with urgency from the outset, trading clean exchanges, testing each other's chins, and refusing to give an inch. Bradley showed flashes of the form that had made him a five-time world champion, landing hard combinations and occasionally staggering Pacquiao with looping shot. But it was Pacquiao who ultimately delivered the signature moments of the night. In the seventh round, a perfectly timed left hand sent Bradley to the canvas for the first knockdown of the fight, a moment that instantly shifted momentum. Then, in the ninth round, Pacquiao produced an even more emphatic sequence, a counter left hand followed by a short right that sent Bradley crashing down again in dramatic fashion, leaving him visibly dazed as he tried to gather himself before the count. Bradley, ever the warrior, refused to quit. He survived the final rounds on heart and conditioning alone, absorbing punishment but never allowing the fight to be stopped, determined to hear the final bell on his feet no matter what the judges ultimately decided. When the scorecards were read, all three judges saw it identically, a unanimous decision in favor of Manny Pacquiao, closing out the trilogy with a performance that reaffirmed his status as one of the greatest fighters of his generation. For Bradley, it marked a heartbreaking end to the rivalry, a third consecutive loss to the same opponent despite genuinely competitive efforts each time out. Yet even in defeat, he left the ring with the respect of fans and commentators alike, widely regarded as one of the toughest, most durable challengers Pacquiao ever faced. Looking back across all three fights, what makes the Pacquiao-Bradley trilogy so compelling isn't just the action inside the ropes, though there was plenty of that across 36 dramatic rounds. It's the storyline that wove through each chapter, a first fight defined by shocking controversy, a second fight built around redemption, and a third and final fight that delivered the kind of definitive, emphatic ending trilogies rarely get. Few rivalries in modern boxing history offer that same narrative arc, moving from outrage to vindication to closure, all while showcasing two fighters who never stopped bringing genuine effort and heart into that ring. In the years since, both men have gone on to build legacies that extend far beyond their fights with each other. Pacquiao cemented his place as an all-time great and a national icon, later pursuing a political career in the Philippines even as questions about his boxing future lingered. Bradley, for his part, earned lasting respect throughout the sport, remembered not for the disputed decision that once made him a villain to casual fans, but for the toughness, heart, and competitive fire he brought into three of the most talked-about fights of his era. Together, their trilogy remains a reminder that some rivalries are defined less by knockouts and more by the sheer will of two men refusing to back down from each other, fight after fight after fight. So now it's your turn to weigh in on one of boxing's most debated trilogies. Do you think Timothy Bradley truly deserved that first controversial decision back in 2012, or did the judges get it wrong that night? And out of all three fights, which one do you consider the most thrilling to watch? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this is a debate that boxing fans